So glad to have you along once again. We are joined as always by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, which includes such places as Vermilion in Old Town and Eat Bar in Arlington. What's on tap this week?
Okay, so this week we have a cool new beer from St. Bernardus, a brewery in West Flanders, Belgium, in Watou. The Flemish north, but all the way towards to the west. This is a brewery that has been making wonderful beers for a very long time. A lot of people know that they were the ones who brewed the Westfaletteren beers, which are probably the most difficult beers in the world to find. The Westfaletteren Trappist monks in Belgium. Their monastery is right near the St. Bernardus Brewery. And that monastery actually in 1946 decided to cease production at the monastery, and St. Bernardus brewed the Westfaletteren beers under contract for 46 years until 1992. So that's what they were consumed with for a long time, but since 92 they've had their own line of really stunning beers. The St. Bernardus Apt 12 is one of the best Belgian strong dark or quadruples that you can find in the world. I mean, it's unbelievable. They make fantastic beers, and yet they're always innovative. They're experimenting with lots of new things. To that point, I think a lot of people would be almost surprised to find out that Japan is a huge market for not just craft beer, but Belgian beer. It's enormous over there.
I was going to ask, because I was just glancing at the label.
The label is amazing in a lot of ways.
There's some Japanese symbols on there.
Yeah, so
sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It's crazy. So the Japanese consume lots of Belgian beers. They have for a very long time, like kind of before it was cool. They love Belgian ales. And Tokyo, obviously, is a hotbed of Belgian ale drinking as well. So St. Bernardus is actually opened a St. Bernardus pub in Tokyo just this year. And to inaugurate the opening of the St. Bernardus pub in Tokyo, in Japan, they brewed this beer, which they fittingly call Tokyo, for that occasion, primarily for the pub, but of course they've also sent some out to other accounts throughout the world. And that's what we're drinking today. So that's why you see your Japanese characters over here, which I'm not going to pretend to
we'll
understand.
Put a close-up of that if we can later.
And then the monk, it's not unusual for secular breweries in Belgium to play up the monastic traditions of their styles, because whether the monks are actually brewing, which happens very rarely anymore at all, even at the Trappist breweries, or not, the styles that they're known for have been made by lots of other brewers, the secular brewers, and they call these abbey ales typically versus the Trappist ales, but very similar styles. So you'll see many of these breweries utilizing the monk monastic imagery on the labels. And so what's cool for this one is that it seems that the monk that adorns all of the St. Bernardus labels seems to be wearing a kimono of sorts, maybe, and has these kind of cherry blossoms behind him. So definitely a kind of Japanese-inspired label there as well, which is really cool. Now, the beer itself is a 6% Belgian wheat beer. I wouldn't call it a wit beer traditionally, because wit beers are spiced, typically with coriander and curacao orange peel. This beer is unspiced. It is brewed with wheat. It is unfiltered. But another difference here is that wit beer, and I'm talking about like Hoegaarden traditionally, and then at stateside we have such great ones like Allagash White, are brewed with coriander and orange peel and brewed with unmalted wheat, meaning just like raw flaked wheat. That gives it a little bit more body, a little bit of a crisp, almost tartness in the finish. This beer is brewed with malted wheat, which has actually been malted. So some of the sugars are fermentable through the malting process. It'll give it a little bit more sweetness, I think, on the palate. So we have a malted wheat version of wheat beer, unspiced, great aromatics in the nose.
Yeah.
That's all generated from the fermentation of the particular St. Bernardus Belgian yeast. So it's got great kind of floral, mild fruit and spice qualities from the fermentation. But what I love about this beer is that the kind of toasted wheat quality, the doughy, bready notes are apparent in the nose as well.
Very inviting.
Yeah. Super refreshing. Delicious, complex, though only 6% alcohol, and really malty. I mean, you get a great interplay of barley and wheat, the toasty, biscuity qualities there. finishing dry without being bitter at all, and refreshing. And a great lacing on this too. You see the carbonation of the foam. This bottle is re-fermented beer. It's re-fermented in the bottle condition. So it's not force carbonated at all. It's unfiltered, unpasteurized, of course, corked and caged before opening. And what this allows to happen is all natural carbonation. So they add a little yeast, a little sugar into the bottle, boom, comes out. Natural carbonation is creamy. It's got more texture to it, and it's not as gassy. And you get that here. It's a beautiful kind of smooth carbonation that's not overwhelming the flavors on your palate.
There is nothing better than having a light shown on your own personal ignorance. I would have never thought, I don't know why, that the Japanese would be big Belgian beer fans. I mean, for no reason. It's
just like one of the, well, you got to think of, you just presume that, this is going back years now too, you just presume that most of the world drinks macro beer, big macro-produced lagers, or other alcoholic beverages, you think of the Japanese, you think of like sake production, and that's huge, shochu and things like that over there. And then the bigger macro beers you find, like Sapporo and Kirin, things like that. But yeah, they've had a taste for Belgian beers for a very long time, and I think it'd be cool if you go to Tokyo to check that place out.
And again, it's not that I'm surprised, I just hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
And I do like the Sapporo Reserve, even though it's brewed by Molson in
Right,
Canada, I think, but it's very tasty.
It's tasty, yeah. It's got some pop to it, yeah. And unlike the Imperial IPA we were talking about last week, this one is a dream come true for like any food, pretty much. I mean, the hallmarks of fantastic beers for food are sweetness, because we find sweetness in so much of our food. It harmonizes with so many things like caramelization and sugar and starch and protein and things, fat and things like that. It's great with sweetness. And this effervescence that, like I said, is natural. So it's going to be able to scrub your palate clean. It's going to be able to dig rich flavors off your palate, like unctuous cheeses and eggs and things like that. It'll insist that the beer be tasted in Congress with those things, kind of open it up, blow it open, but also it can wash away spicy flavors, intense flavors. It's really great with just about anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it would be fantastic with a raw piece of tuna on rice or with a bacon cheeseburger.
Yeah, and that is really, at the end of the day,
it's very versatile.
Versatile as hell. I mean, you can do it with seafood comes, obviously that makes perfect sense, but it also is great with something that's even, like you said, bacon cheeseburger, sausages, or with mussels and white wine. It's wonderful.
Now another thing I don't know much about, and many people may not know much about, and I'm just presuming you know more, is the monks who make these fantastic beers in Belgium, do they and other places, do they venture out much? Do they go, when you're talking about we're having this special beer for Japan, do they go to Japan,
right,
or do they not?
Typically not. No, I mean, well, and these guys, of course, they are secular breweries, so they're not actually monastic brewers, but like Westvleteren, which is right nearby, they don't as much. I mean, it's an interesting thing, the Trappist breweries, because they are definitely businesses in a sense that they need to generate money for the monks to continue their self-sustaining lifestyles, to live, but also for charity and things like that. So it's in their interest to sell their beer. Like Chimay is heavily marketed, really, and you see it around a lot.
It's at Costco.
Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere. But in an effort to create profit that can be utilized for monastic means, so that's a little different. I think at the same time they're very careful to maintain their monastic lifestyle, which is separate from the world. In fact, when Westvleteren decided to stop brewing in 1946 after the Second World War, one of the reasons was that the abbot of the monastery thought that they needed to kind of pay less attention to secular things, and they wanted to just let this other brewery produce, St. Bernardus, produce the beer for them, and then give them a portion of the profits. And a lot of monasteries went that way over the years. There used to be many more monastic breweries. The interesting thing is that the Trappists are very careful about who gets to call themselves Trappist, because it's a trademark and it's something that means a lot to many people. So I think Westvleteren in 1992 was realizing that in order to get that authenticity back, they had to brew again. And actually, Westfaletteren, of all of the monastic breweries in Belgium and one in the Netherlands, the Trappist that is, like Chimay and Rochefort, Westfaletteren is the only one where the monks are heavily involved with the actual brewing. They're involved more in administrative roles at the other Trappist breweries.
I mean, you may be happy living under your rock, and that's fine, but I love the idea of thinking that people in another part of the country might be tipping back a glass of this at the same time we are.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Now, I'm full of them, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. You got a question for Greg? Here's how you ask him. Beer of the week at WTOP.com. We'll get that question to Greg, and he'll do his best. He always does to answer. Greg, thanks as always. We appreciate it. Everyone, please do always drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.